There was a time in my life where I relied on motivation more than structure. If I felt disciplined, I made good money decisions. If I felt overwhelmed, I avoided things until I felt better. If I was inspired, I planned. If I was tired, I let things slide. What changed my financial life was not working harder. It wasn't becoming more naturally organized. It wasn't even making more money. It was building systems and routines. Not glamorous systems, not complicated spreadsheets that take hours to maintain, just simple, repeatable habits and structures that just completely removed guesswork from my life. This month, we are talking all about systems and routines for life and money. And today, I want to take you behind the scenes a little bit. I'm sharing the 5 money focused systems that keep my life and my business organized. And these are systems I actually use. If you have ever felt like you're spinning a lot of plates, setting big goals, and still wondering why everything feels heavier than it should, it's probably not a discipline problem. It's a systems problem. My hope is that you can take some of the systems and routines that work best for me and apply them to your own life. All right, let's dive into the first system. And this is my daily and weekly money rhythm. Before we even get into weekly check ins, I need to tell you something that surprises people, except, of course, my money coaching clients. I track my spending daily. Yes, every single day. But before you start questioning everything, this is not some 2 hour spreadsheet marathon. It takes me about 5 to 10 minutes to track my spending. That's it. And the only reason it's that fast is because I'm just building off of the previous day. I open my spending tracker, which is a spreadsheet. I look at the previous day's transactions, if there even were any, and I log them under the appropriate category and move on. There's no backlog. There's no guessing what that $47 charge was from 2 weeks ago. There's no emotional spiral, just quick awareness and closure. That tiny daily habit eliminates financial overwhelm for me in a big way because here's what actually happens when you do not track your spending consistently. You wait and then you avoid, and then it feels too big to deal with. And that's also why my coaching program is weekly. I meet with my clients every single week because they're required to track their spending. The longer you avoid looking at what you're doing with your money, the worse it feels. So, daily tracking just removes the drama. It keeps me connected to my money in small, manageable doses. And I think when you stay connected, you stay in control. So, that's my daily quick rhythm. The weekly rhythm is where things tighten up strategically for me. So once a week, I have a scheduled money check in. It's blocked off on my calendar or on my Asana, and it happens like any other priority on my calendar or my Asana. And during that weekly money check in, I review all my personal transaction again. I confirm that all of my categories are accurate. I look ahead at what's coming for the next week, 2 weeks, the next month or so. I check all of my account balances, and I do the same for my business too. In addition to what I just described, I also use this time to update my QuickBooks for business expenses. So that's what I use to track my business expenses. And then I review the business income and spending for the week. So updating QuickBooks weekly is just critical for me. I think as a business owner, I do not want my bookkeeping lagging behind reality. When your numbers are current, you just make better decisions. So, this weekly rhythm really keeps me proactive. It prevents surprises, it allows me to think ahead and plan ahead. It keeps both my personal and business finances aligned. If you struggle with money anxiety, I can almost guarantee there isn't a consistent tracking system in place. That consistency brings a sense of calm for me, and I am all about peace at this stage of my life. So if you are struggling with your finances, I strongly recommend you consider a tracking system. System number two, profit first in my business. I read Profit First back in 2018, and it fundamentally changed how I manage money in my business. If you have been around City Girl Savings for a while, you've heard me talk about this before, especially in podcast episode number 48, Applying Profit First to Your Life and Business. I'll make sure to link to that episode in the show notes if you want a deeper dive on the system. But let me just quickly break down the model and why it matters. So, Profit First was created by Mike Michalowicz, and it essentially flips traditional accounting on its head. The traditional formula says revenue minus expenses equals profit. Profit First says revenue minus profit equals expenses. So, in other words, you allocate profit before you have the chance to spend on anything else. So, here's essentially how it works in business. You create separate bank accounts. So, you have a revenue account where your income comes in. You have your owner's pay account so you can pay yourself a salary. You have a taxes account so you can save or put money to the side for taxes. You have your operating expenses account so you actually pay for running the business. And then you have your profit account. All of the income that comes in flows into the revenue account. And then typically twice a month, for me personally, it's the 10th and the 25th of the month, you allocate that revenue, so the revenue for that period, based on predetermined percentages. Now, Mike Michalowicz has percentage recommendations, but I just want to share that when I first started using Profit First, my business revenue wasn't extravagant. It wasn't crazy high. So I didn't start with the percentages that he recommended. I started small and made it work for me. I know there's no judgment here, so I'm just going to be honest. My first allocations were 1% of revenue to profit, 0 to taxes. I'm kind of cringing as I say that. 5% to owner pay, and the remaining 94% went to operating expenses. So clearly, and by no means was this glamorous, but it really helped me build the discipline I needed early on to manage my business finances. And over time, as revenue grew, I increased those percentages. But had I waited until I was making enough to implement structure, I likely would have overspent during those seasons of growth. That taught me that structure during small seasons or, lighter income seasons really prepares you for the bigger income seasons. And I want to add that Profit First isn't just for business owners. You can apply the same principle personally. Every payday, before spending anything, allocate a percentage to your savings or investments. That's paying yourself first, even if it's 1%, especially if it's 1%. If you do not tell your money where to go first, it will disappear into operating expenses, aka your life. Moving on to system number 3, quarterly financial and goal planning, the 12-week year style. So most people treat planning like a January only activity. They set goals at the beginning of the year, they feel motivated for a few weeks, and then they don't revisit those goals until December, when it's time to feel disappointed or surprised. I was most people, but I do not operate that way anymore, and I haven't for a while. Every single quarter, I sit down for a strategic review, and not just reviewing my finances, but of all my goals. And I actually follow the 12-week year framework that I learned from Brian Moran. The idea behind the 12-week year is simple, but it's powerful. Instead of thinking of, a year in 12-month cycles, you think in 12-week execution cycles. So a quarter becomes a year. And that shorter window forces you to focus, it forces urgency, and it forces clarity as you work toward your goals. So for me, quarterly planning includes reviewing my income and revenue targets, business metrics and profit margins, savings goals personally, investment contributions, upcoming large expenses for me and my business, personal goals, life goals, health goals, and business growth priorities. So during this quarterly planning session, this is where I ask myself hard questions and I get real about where I truly stand. I have learned, and I've learned this especially as someone who sets big goals, that you can't just set the target and hope you land there, right? Like you got to actually work towards those goals. You have to build execution around those goals. And this 12-week structure really helps me zoom in. Instead of thinking I have all year to hit this income goal, I really have to think I have 12 weeks to hit this income goal. And what needs to happen to make that a reality? What do I need to do every single week to make sure that I am hitting this goal? And that shift alone has increased my productivity and it has reduces procrastination. I'll admit I'm not one to procrastinate, but knowing that I have 12 weeks to hit some big targets really does light a flame under my rear end. Okay, system number 4, calendar-based checkpoints plus task management in Asana. I briefly mentioned Asana earlier, but we're going to dive deeper here. So, for me personally, if it's not scheduled or it's not systematized, it's not going to happen. I do not rely on memory. I do not rely on I'll remember later. And I definitely don't rely on motivation. I have learned this lesson the hard way too many times. Double booking myself, forgetting about an important appointment, or forgetting really important tasks that need to get done. So now my calendar and Asana run my life and business. Every recurring and even one off responsibility lives somewhere structured for me, and that's either on my calendar or inside Asana. Now, if you don't know what Asana is, it is a task management tool. You can go to asana.com. It's completely free, or they have a free option. I'm on the free option. Totally game changing for managing projects, tasks, to-dos, recurring things, one-off things. Highly recommend it. Asana has been a game changer for managing my tasks and to-dos. Every task related to my business is in Asana. Every task related to managing the Palm Springs property is in Asana. Maintenance reminders, they're in Asana. Vendor follow-ups, they're in Asana. Content planning, it's in Asana. I think you get where I'm going here. Everything that needs to get done for my business or income generating opportunities, it's in Asana. But I also use Asana for personal reminders. Why, you ask? Because I feel like, and I've experienced on my own, when you hold everything in your head or when you think that you're going to remember everything, you feel overwhelmed and you likely don't remember everything. But when you hold it all in a system, you feel organized and you honestly feel better. Like you know that, okay, I don't have to remember to do this. I will be reminded thanks to my system. And I feel like that organization really translates into financial protection. So let me give you an example. If a rental property guest of mine is checking in, I'm not scrambling. I'm not remembering, oh my gosh, they're checking in this day. Did I get X, Y, and Z done? No, it's already been figured out because it was in Asana and my to-dos related to that guest checking in have been completed. If a business tool renews its subscription, I've already planned for it because I got my reminder in Asana. If I need to schedule an annual checkup, I'm prepared. High achieving women don't struggle because they're incapable, okay? They do not. We're actually very capable. They struggle, or we struggle. I consider myself a high achieving woman we struggle because we're carrying too much mentally. And I have learned and experienced that when you externalize your responsibilities into a system, your nervous system calms down. And when you're calm, you make better financial decisions, you make better life decisions. This is not about being hyper productive, it's about removing chaos. And finally, system number 5, monthly net worth tracking. So, out of all the systems I described today, this is probably the most grounding system that I have. Every month, on the last day of the month, I calculate my net worth. And net worth is assets less debts equal your net worth. So, I track the balances of my assets, my debts, business accounts, investments, rental properties, cash, everything, right? Everything is included in my net worth tracker. There's no rounding up, there's no guessing. I literally go into all of my accounts to see where I stand, and I account for that on that specific day. This system is so important for me, and I think anyone really. This would be important for anyone because your income can fluctuate, revenue from your business can fluctuate, expenses can spike, and markets can dip. But your net worth over time shows your trajectory. It tells the bigger story of your financial situation. There have been plenty of months where my income felt slower or unexpected expenses hit, basically months where I felt behind. And then I update my net worth tracker and I see growth. Sometimes the growth is small. I'm not going to lie, it's not always huge growth. Sometimes it is huge growth. It's dramatic. And sometimes it's slightly less than the month before. So maybe there was no growth. But regardless, all of that's okay because wealth is not built in dramatic moments. It's built in consistent months. And tracking net worth for me keeps me focused on that long-term expansion instead of just short-term emotion. It shifts my thinking from what did I spend this month to what did I build this month? And I think that mindset shift really changes behavior. When you see yourself as someone building wealth and not just managing their bills, you move differently. You negotiate differently. You invest differently. You save differently. You say no differently. This is the system that really keeps me anchored to my big picture, my dream life, my overall vision for what I want. And if the goal is financial peace and long-term wealth, you need something that really keeps you zoomed out. And I think net worth tracking does that. Okay, so you might be listening and thinking, Rhea, that sounds great, but I can barely stay consistent with budgeting. That's exactly why this matters. The women who appear organized, they're not more disciplined. They just rely less on motivation and rely more on systems. If you are constantly restarting your financial goals, it's not because you don't care. Of course you do. That's why they're goals in the first place. But it's because you don't have repeatable structures and systems holding you steady. And I say that with all the love in the world because once you build systems, everything feels lighter. You don't have to think as hard. You don't have to panic as often. You don't have to try harder. You just follow the structure.